Well, good morning from me as well. It's a great joy to be with you here today. My name's James. If we haven't met yet, I think I've met everybody in this room, a couple of guests with us, but I've got had a chance to meet you guys too. It's a great joy to be kicking off a new series today. But just before we do that, I just thought I'd let you in on what Mother's Day looked like in our house this morning. My lovely wife, who's mother to our 3 kids, woke up and I wasn't there because I was finishing off the message, and so I'd already left our apartment, and she woke up to a child who had wet the bed. Happy Mother's Day. And driving here, one of our other children threw up in the car. Happy Mother's Day too. So she's not in the room right now. I think she's probably quarantining with our vomiting child. But I hope that those of you who are celebrating Mother's Day in different ways will have a better day than that day. Like I said, it's a huge privilege to be kicking off a new series as well for us today. But just before I get there, quick question. How many people have traveled on an aeroplane in the last 12 months? Quick show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think if I asked that question a couple of years ago, I think there would have been a lot more hands in the air. But some people have started traveling a little bit more on flights recently as domestic travels open up, and even travel internationally to New Zealand has opened up until this week. I've been seeing people, I don't know if you have noticed this, but on social media, people posting little photos of like aeroplane windows. I don't know if you've seen that. Like, people didn't used to get excited about a business trip to Brisbane, but now people are posting that on social media with like, the caption is almost always the same. It's been a while. It's like, yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while for all of us. You know, that was maybe that looked like a normal part of your life a couple of years ago. Not many of us are getting a chance to travel now. But it's made me think of family and friends who I've got overseas. Many of us, I know, have got family and friends overseas. Family I've not seen for a long time. Some of my brothers have had kids in the last couple of years that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, nieces and nephews. It's also made me think about trips that I've had in the past when I've traveled to see people. And I just wanted to share a few experiences with you of places I've traveled to meet somebody and the different experiences I've had arriving there. So, a couple of years ago, I traveled to New York City to visit a friend of mine who was living in a little town off the tip of Long Island called Montauk. And I was traveling through America at the time, and so said to him, how about I pop by and see you, we do some surfing together. And so I emailed him my flight details a couple of months before coming, and he was like, yeah, it'd be great to catch up, we'll go surfing. And then 2 or 3 weeks before I went, I emailed him my flight details again. I said, just confirming this is when I'll be arriving. No reply back. A week out from the trip, emailed him again. By the way, these are my flight details, exactly where and when I'll be landing. No reply. Started thinking, is this guy going to meet me or what? And then like the night before I flew, I texted him and said, I'm on my way tomorrow. Here are my flight details. He replied back and said, just make your way out to Montauk and I'll catch up with you there. That's all his reply said. Make your way out to Montauk. I'll catch up with you there. Now, I don't know if you know how far JFK is from Montauk, but it's like 3 hours or something like that. And I was like, where in Montauk? And when in Montauk would you like to meet? No reply. So I just landed at JFK, caught a taxi, a subway, and then a 3-hour bus ride to get out to Montauk, and then just sat there and waited and hoped that my friend would find me, or at least reply to one. I don't know why we're still friends, me and this guy. But eventually, when he finished work that afternoon, he came and found me and was like, let's go surfing. Why you look so sad? And so we went out together. So all he gave me was a destination, and a very vague destination, as it were. Then a couple of years ago, I traveled to visit my brother and my sister-in-law in Italy. They live in Milan. Spare a thought for those guys. It's been tough over the last 18 months for them. But when we traveled there, my brother Pete was working that day, the day we were meant to arrive, and my sister-in-law Beck was at home with their toddler, and so she emailed us very comprehensive details about how to get to from the airport to their apartment. And like, we were in a foreign country, obviously, didn't know our way around, didn't know the language, but these detailed instructions were very comprehensive. And so although we had a couple of blips along the way, there's nothing like having to navigate your way through a foreign city to like make your relationship that much more robust with your life partner. We did end up making it, which was great. So for Toby, I had a general destination. For visiting Pete and Beck, they gave us detailed instructions about how to get there, but we still had to make our own way there. But then 2 years ago, Nanda and Steve Montgomery and a few of us went on a ministry trip to the nation of Laos. And that was obviously a foreign nation for all of us, didn't speak the language, had no idea really where we were going. And we were greeted at the airport by this beautiful, kind, gentle man called Samjit, who ended up traveling around with us and showing us everywhere to go. We barely left his side for the whole week that we were there. And he was a beautiful, kind and gentle man, but a man who carried an assertive authority because it was his nation. Like, he knew where he was going, he knew the territory, he was very comfortable there, and it made us feel very safe about where we were. So for Toby, he gave me a general destination, I had to work it out. For Pete and Beck, they gave me some instructions, but I still had to make my way there myself. But this guy Jit led us. He called us to come and follow him in this place, which was a little foreign to us. And the reason I talk about those three different kind of experiences is that following Jesus in this life is a little bit like that. He invites us to come and learn what living life is like from him by watching him live it in front of us, or certainly in Scripture. And when he says to us, "Come and follow me," it's more of an invitation than it is a command. But it's an invitation that carries with it that same kind of assertive authority that Jit had. Because Jesus, like, his territory, his expertise is life. And so when he calls us to follow him, we kind of discover the best way to live in this life. In Matthew 4, Jesus meets a couple of guys called Simon Peter and his brother Andrew, and he says to them in Matthew 4:19, "Come and follow me, and I will make you fishers of people." And Jesus uses that phrase, "follow me," almost 20 times across the four Gospels. He uses that phrase, "follow me." And it's like probably one of his most consistent phrases he uses in his entire ministry here on earth. And then just after he meets Peter and Andrew, and after they join him, he meets these brothers, James and John, the sons of Zebedee. And Jesus calls the same thing to them, "Come and follow me," and they follow him as well. And it's a really significant conversation for a number of reasons, because it's kind of what kickstarts Jesus' ministry. So up until this point, Jesus has been growing and learning and maturing as a man. And then he gets baptized and he spends 40 days fasting in the desert. And then he calls these guys to follow him. That's like literally the next thing that happens in the Bible. And then straight after that, he preaches the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5. That's the thing that happens next. Like, probably the most famous sermon in all of human history is the next thing that happens. And that's why, in parallel to these Sunday messages, this little series that we're going to do, we're also going to be looking at the Sermon on the Mount in our city groups. And as Craig said, if you're not already part of a city group, we'd love to help you find one. The reason we're looking at that Sermon on the Mount is because it's all about what following Jesus actually looks like. So he's called these people to follow him, and then he starts teaching them what it looks like to actually follow him. So right at the outset of his ministry, Jesus says, "Come and follow me, and I will make you." I will make you. I don't know how that sounds to you. I will make you. Does that sound a little threatening? What Jesus isn't saying is, I will make you do stuff. I will make you act a certain way. I will make you behave in a certain manner. That's not what Jesus is saying. That call to "I will make you" is not meant to be a threat. But as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, which is literally like what a Christian is, just a follower of Jesus, it can be tempting to think that following Jesus is all about learning a certain ritual or rule or technique for acting the way that Christians are supposed to act, whatever that is meant to be. We can be tempted to just try to act the right way, but that just leads to fatigue and getting tired and disillusioned and probably a little bitter as well. Think about all the New Year's resolutions that you've made over the course of your life. I don't know, maybe you're like me, you've made a bunch and followed through on very few of them. It's just so difficult to try to change your behavior, to just try out of your own effort to change your behavior. And that's my natural propensity. So maybe it's just me, but maybe you can identify with that as well. But when Jesus says, "Follow me and I will make you," it's not a threat, It's a promise. He's saying, come, follow me. Bring all your stuff as you are. Don't have to change. Just come as you are, and I will form something new within you. I will make you. It's a promise. It's a life that demonstrates that change is possible for us. And it's not about us learning how to look patient or look kind or look self-controlled. It's not even a life about trying to be patient or be kind or be self-controlled. It's about becoming the kind of person who just simply is those things. That's what a life following Jesus looks at. It's not about trying to look or be or to act in that way. And I get it's a process. Of course it's a process. Craig said a couple of months ago when he was preaching that the gospel is both a moment and a journey. It's a journey as well for us. It's a process of learning and becoming and expressing the life of Christ. And it involves our identity, it involves our minds, of course it involves our actions, it involves our hands, our heads, and our hearts. It involves all of those things. But being with Jesus changes who we are becoming in our character. And that's naturally going to reveal itself in the way that we live our lives, in the way that we do our actions. Be, become, do. And that's what I'd love us to explore as a church community over this next little period of time as we look at this little series together. It's about learning how to be with Jesus, learning how to become like Jesus, and learning how to do the work of Jesus. But it all starts with being. It doesn't start with doing. And so right now, I just want, could we just take a moment to engage our minds and convince ourselves that what you hear today is not about doing. You're going to hear some stuff from me. You're going to hear some stuff from some friends who are going to share on video. But what is being communicated today is not about you doing. Today we start with being. That's what we're starting today. That's what we carry on with really for the rest of our life. But we're starting from a place of being. We looked at the book of Ephesians, a whirlwind trip through it the other week as we were looking at the armor of God, and talked about Watchman Nee saying before we learn how to walk and stand, we need to learn how to sit, how to rest. So put any thoughts of doing out of your mind today. We're learning how to be together. One of my favorite verses, favorite passages of scripture is John 15, where Jesus describes in this kind of metaphor form of what it's like to be connected to him. And he says, I'm the vine and you are the branches. I'm sure that you're familiar with that. He says, I'm the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So today, and over this series, we're learning what it looks like to abide in him, to remain in him, to be with him. And sometimes in order to understand what something is, it's helpful to define what it isn't. So I just want to spend a few minutes talking about what being with Jesus isn't. First of all, being with Jesus is not about dutiful discipline. It's not about dutiful discipline. Being with Jesus, it's wonderful. It's wonderful, it's glorious, it's a joy, it's a pleasure, it's a privilege. I have Fridays off. That's my rest day. I don't want to make you jealous right now, but a couple of months ago, it occurred to me that Emmy and Kiralee are at school on Fridays, and so we've only got one of the three kids at home with Heather and I. And so I said to Heather, hey, what if we were to ask your parents, who are now both retired, whether they would have Juliet occasionally on a Friday, and we could have a whole day together with our kids. And so she asked her parents, and they said, how about we have her every Friday of school term? That would be amazing. That would be incredible. I think we could agree to that. And I'm a little bit embarrassed telling you that right now. It is incredible to have that. It's a real privilege. You might be quite jealous right now of that, but I don't care. I'm not going to let it spoil my day with Heather. Not going to let it spoil the sips of coffee we enjoy at our favorite cafe. Not going to let it spoil every step of the lake walk we have around Narrabeen. Not going to let it spoil those moments reading in silence, on the balcony, in the sun. I'm not going to let it spoil that. You might be jealous. I don't care. Being with my wife, it's not a duty. It's not a duty. I love it. Sometimes we have to be disciplined. Sometimes we have to make choices in order to carve out that time, in order to have that space to walk around the lake. But it's not a duty. Being with Jesus is wonderful. Don't you want to be like the psalmist in Psalm 84 who says, "How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty. My soul yearns and even faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart, my flesh cry out for the living God." That doesn't sound like dutiful discipline. That sounds like being lost in wonder and awe and praise. That sounds like a delight. Being with Jesus isn't about painful obedience either. Just carrying on in John 15 in that vine and branches metaphor, Jesus says this, "If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I've kept my Father's commands and remain in his love." And you might think, hang on, you just said it's not about painful obedience, but Jesus here is talking about keeping commands. But the question is, why? Why do we keep his commands? Do we obey God so that God's happy with us, so God accepts us, so we have his approval? Jesus answers for us in the next verse, verse 11, "I've told you this so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete." We obey so that Jesus' joy is in us and our joy might find its completion. I love that. I love in John 8:31, just before this, Jesus says, "If you hold to my teaching, you really are my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will" what? Hold you captive? Keep you hostage? No, the truth will set you free. That doesn't sound like painful obedience. That doesn't sound like dutiful discipline. I love John 10. Jesus says, "I've come that you may have life and life to the full." That's what Jesus came for. I love this other translation. It says, "But I've come to give you everything in abundance, more than you expect, life in its fullness until you overflow." You love that. Everything in abundance, more than you expect, life in all its fullness until you overflow. Painful obedience? Dutiful discipline? I don't think so. Isn't that what your heart longs for? That sounds incredible. That's what my heart longs for. Being with Jesus also isn't about having a furrowed brow, like trying really hard, straining. Being with Jesus doesn't give you wrinkles. It doesn't. It's great for your skin. Being with Jesus doesn't give you wrinkles because it's not about trying and straining and striving. Jesus says in Matthew 11, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Rest, easy yoke, light burden. Doesn't sound like hard work. Doesn't sound like stress and straining and furrowed brow. It sounds wonderful. Being with Jesus, it also isn't about being perfectly put together either. I don't know if you heard in those verses, but the very qualification for coming to him is because you're burdened and weary. Like, you don't have to unburden yourself in order to come to be. It's actually your burden that qualifies you to come to him. And that's wonderful. You know, sometimes that means when you come to him, you're a blubbering mess. That's okay. Because that's part of the privilege and the intimacy of deep relationship, is that we get to see each other at our worst, and we come to Jesus at our worst. That's part of the privilege of deep, trusting relationship. So being with Jesus, it's not about dutiful discipline. It's not about painful obedience. Being with Jesus isn't about that furrowed brow or being perfectly put together either. Being with Jesus is about being your most true self and opening up your whole life, your whole heart to him. It's about our posture. It's about our priorities. It's about where our treasure is as well. It's about being connected to him, and like that metaphor of the vine and the branches, having his life flow through us and sustain us. Because at the heart of Christianity is this call to follow and this promise, I will make you. Jesus is calling us to himself. That's what life with him is all about, individually and corporately. He's come to me, follow me, stay close to me, abide in me, remain in me. If you're weary, if you're burdened, stay connected to me, walk with me. Let my life and my love flow through you by the power of the Holy Spirit. That's what being with him really looks like. I want that more for my life. I don't know about you. I want that more for my life. I want to be like David, who says, the one thing I want, Lord, is to dwell in your courts all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of your holiness. That's the one thing that I want. I want to be like Moses, who said in Exodus 33, when God says, Moses, you can have the promised land. You can go into it if you want. Problem is, I just can't come with you. My presence can't come with you because there's some stuff between me and you and I'll obliterate you. So you can go, I just can't come. And Moses is like, no deal. I'm not having that. If you don't come with us, if your presence isn't with us, we're not moving. David's like, the one thing I want is to gaze upon the beauty of your holiness. This incredible quote from John Piper, he asks this question. He says, if you could have heaven with no sickness, with all the friends you've ever had on earth and all the food you've ever liked and all the leisure activities you've ever enjoyed, all the natural beauties you ever saw and all the pleasures you've ever tasted, could you be satisfied with heaven if Jesus wasn't there? Could you be satisfied with heaven if Jesus wasn't there? David's like, the one thing I want. Moses, if your presence doesn't go, we're not going. Paul says, like, the prize that I'm striving for is to know you more. Could you be satisfied with heaven if Jesus wasn't there? Your following Jesus begins and it continues with learning to be with him. It's both a moment and a journey. It's today and it carries on. Learning to be with him. I was talking to Dave Campbell. Dave and Amma have recently joined us as a community. They can't be here today, but I was talking to Dave about some of what God's been doing in his life. He's given me permission to share this, by the way. Some of what God's been doing in his life recently. And he talked about this kind of habit of silent prayer that he's really discovered that God works really powerfully in his life when he's just silent before him. Because so often, like, prayer's a monologue, us talking to God, but it should be a dialogue, right? Where we create space to allow him to speak back to us. And he's just like, his relationship with God has come alive as he's been doing this more. And he told me about a recent time where he was just like late at night, lying on the floor, or lying in the grass in a park outdoors, and just crying out to God and allowing space for God to speak into his life. And God spoke some things that have changed his perspective on everything. It's been really significant, really wonderful for him. And it made me think, like, silent prayer, that's not something we talk about a lot as a church, but that's great. Like, that could be part of our habit and our rhythm as Christians, as followers of Jesus, where we allow him to speak into our lives more. And I thought, actually, lots of people have got great things that they enjoy, which help them to be with Jesus. And so I've asked some friends, some local and some overseas, to share with us different things that they enjoy about what it's like to be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do the work of Jesus. We're going to hear from them over the next few weeks. But first of all, we're going to hear from some people about what it's like to be with Jesus. That'll come up on the screen, and I'll come back in a minute's time.
Hi everyone.
Hi guys.
We're just really honored to be asked to be part of your series that you're doing right now, which, by the way, we think is really, really cool.
Very cool.
So we're just going to share a little bit about being with Jesus, becoming more like Jesus, and doing the work of Jesus. And Tom's going to start us off.
Yeah, so being with Jesus, I love worship. I can't sing to save my life, but I love worship. I love just being with him in the word and in prayer. But the most important thing and the most fruitful times for me is when I've made him a priority, when I've taken something out of my life that really actually doesn't matter that much, and I've put him in place, which recently has meant less Netflix, more him. So just a little bit of time in the evening just to acknowledge him, spend time with him and pray and just enjoy that time with him. That's produced so much more fruit than I've actually put in my life, I found.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's what I like to call the IV of Jesus. I love those quiet times with him where I just get uninterrupted time without the kids and just get to press in for an extended period. But what I've also found recently is just having that drip feed of Jesus into my daily life. You know, a whispering a prayer here and there, acknowledging or remembering a verse that he's spoken to me during my quiet time, and really just applying it and saying, "Yes, Lord, I just need more of you." So recognizing the need for his grace and inviting him into every area has really helped me.
Yeah, ivy of Jesus. I like that. That's nice.
For me, being with Jesus very practically is starting the morning on the couch with a cup of coffee with Jesus. I think it's just a great joy just to start the morning with a good coffee and with a good conversation with Jesus. Another way for me just to spend time with Jesus is walking. I love to walk, and we have some great nature, some great forest around the area where I live. So I love to just go out on a hike and actually quiet myself and just take time to let God speak into my life and spend some time with Jesus. So for me, being with Jesus is very practical all day, trying to look for the quiet time, for the small, or I would almost call it sabbatical moments where we can just rest and hear God's voice and spend time with Jesus.
I suppose the first thing that comes to mind for me is the whole thing of being intentional about choosing Him. We've got to be intentional about choosing Him. We're going to be intentional about stuff in our lives. As a believer, the Holy Spirit lives in us. It's been intentional about choosing Jesus, not because we have to, but because He chose us. He chose to fill us with His Spirit. I guess one little way of being reminded of this is you think about a compass. A compass has north, and yet it still needs to be calibrated and turned so that it doesn't work sideways, but it needs to be calibrated and turned so that the north of the compass point faces north on the compass dial to get true north. And I guess that's what it means to be with Jesus, is to find ways of facing true north. Now, for me, it's Scripture. I find Him in Scripture. I make space every day in the morning with a coffee in the chair, in my van when I'm driving around the city, listening to Scripture. I find ways of just immersing myself because I need true north to be able to have Scripture wash over me so I can get a sense of His heart for me. I mean, the second way that I find I can recalibrate and get true north is through prayer. I find that I need to walk around and move to really get in a rhythm of prayer. I'm not so good at sitting still. Over here where I live in Port Noarlunga, I've got beaches and a river walk, and I've got a couple of key walks that I do where sometimes with my wife, sometimes on my own or with friends, and at least a couple of times a week I try and get to those places to have prayer. I do it when I'm driving through the city. I just seek Him in the little moments, those arrow prayers. As part of that helps me find true north to be with Jesus in the sense of the position of the heart.
How do I find time to be with Jesus? I have a daily practice of being with Jesus. It is, I think, the core that everything else in my life flows out of, that our becoming, that our doing come directly from our being with Jesus. I love what Peter Scazzero says when he says that our doing for Jesus can never exceed our being with Jesus. So I'd love for you to take some time this week and just evaluate in your life, is my doing for exceeding my being with? And if so, I'd encourage you to make some adjustments. So during my being with, there's one key thing that for me has been a game changer, which is that I practice stillness and silence during my being with Jesus daily. Now, this is not an easy challenge one. I don't know how often you sit still and silent, but it can be really challenging, especially in a culture and in a world that has so much activity and action going on. And particularly if you, like me, have 3 little boys in your house, it means that I have to get up often very early to find the still, quiet hours in my house. But it is in those times that I know that I am connecting with Jesus and that everything that I will do in my day flows out of that space.
I think being with Jesus for me is pretty raw. I'm a very emotional person, so It looks like not wearing a mask. I come from a pretty religious background, so there were always specific ways to speak to the Lord or tone of voice to use, and I found it very freeing. Holy Spirit brought about a freedom in my being with Jesus that allowed me to be in tears on the floor, and there may be a lot of snot, or be joyful, like really experience the exuberance of joy that comes from serving him and having an encounter with him. I think also in a practical sense, I've learned as a mom to carve out time for him. But when that's not possible, he's in every moment of my everyday. So I just talk to him all the time, which for most of you who know me, it's not hard to imagine because I talk a lot. And I find that he'll speak to me in places that I least expect. And sometimes it's those 5 minutes that I have to myself in the shower or even on the loo. Like, he's everywhere. And I love that he, in the being with him, I get to be in every moment of my normal daily mundane life.